And Pat, you were planning to move item 5 before item 4, I believe.
Yes.
Is this because we have officers here? We don't want to leave them hanging too long? Okay.
Our transportation staff are going to help with item 5 as well, and they have another engagement at about 9.
Okay.
All right, and the public is in, and we have recorded or started recording.
Great. Good morning. At this time, we'd like to convene the Joint City School Committee for Thursday, April 15th. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, of course. Chair Burt.
Here.
Board Member DiBrienza.
Here.
Board President Darup.
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka. 3 present.
Great, thank you. Can we have the agenda posted on the screen if that's possible?
Yes, of course.
So, there we go. Right, so at this time, we have an opportunity for the public to speak on items that are not otherwise on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, if anyone would like to speak on an agenda item or not on the agenda item, please raise your hand on the Zoom app or press *9. Currently, we have 1 speaker, Ms. Rebecca Eisenberg. If you can unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes on the timer. Ms. Rebecca Eisenberg, if you can please unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yay, okay, thank you. Hi, good morning, bright and early. Thank you for letting me speak. I always love these meetings, and this time I really just want to focus on some things that have come before the City Council that I really wish that the school district would be more involved with. And so I'm just going to use this time to bring this to the attention of the school board. As you know, I do have kids in the school district, and I really am regretful that there aren't more city council members that do, because I think it would just make our leadership in our city so much better. Okay, first of all, there's the ongoing matter of Castellea. Castellea did get sent back down to the architectural review board and the planning commission. Unfortunately, it did so. It's going to come back up again and keep coming and coming. And I think we really need to stop having Castellea take up so much of city time and city cost, because for 2 reasons. There's the impact on the public schools. First is the very, very well-known negative impact that private schools and the subsidization of private schools, which is happening here, the negative impact on public schools that occurs when cities offer so many subsidies and time, like the city of Palo Alto is doing, planning time and planning money to help this private school expand. It's taking up so much time with the city that the city is not doing other things the city really needs to do. For example, affordable housing, while meanwhile, a growing number of our public school families are becoming unhoused. The city needs to do more important things like spend time on affordable housing. Second is the impact of the garage. Castellea had insisted on putting an underground garage on Bryant Street Boulevard, which is, as you know, the most trafficked bike boulevard for our public school students. It was an appalling and arrogant plan. They're still planning on doing it. That was the main reason it got sent down for review. I'm asking the school district to please be involved with this, since Castellea's actions, overreaching actions, are really harming our public school kids. Second thing is that city council is still in the process of considering allowing the billionaire owner of Town and Country, the Ellis family, to convert as much as 20% of Town and Country retail and restaurant space to office space. As you know, due to the laws of, oh my God, of supply and demand, that will real quick.
Ms. Rebecca Eisenberg,
Can
if
I
you could
finish
finish your
this?
thought.
Yes, I will finish this sentence. That's going to raise the prices on all retail and restaurant for our public school kids that eat there. Please get involved and don't let the city council allow the billionaire owner of Town and Country to convert 20% of that space to office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. And Chair Burt, we have no other speakers.
Thank you. So our next item on the agenda is approval of the December 17th, 2020 minutes. I know that Board President Darp was going to review the meeting so that we would have a quorum to vote on it, but one of the quorum members would have been Councilmember Tanaka, and he's not here. So I'm going to move that down to following item number 5.
The minutes that were never approved.
Yeah, and I also want to announce that we're going to move item number 5 ahead of item number 4, so that the staff members that are here for item number 5 don't have to be waiting around needlessly with their valuable time. So on that note, our next item is the superintendent's comments, to be followed by the city manager comments.
Since I don't believe our superintendent's here, should I proceed?
Go
I
right
think
ahead.
so. Our superintendent is at a conference in Southern California. I didn't realize that he wouldn't be here, but go ahead, Mr.
Gotcha.
Shibata.
Happy to do that. Well, maybe I can just bridge a conversation superintendent and I have been having, just to acknowledge for the committee and public's awareness that there is quite a bit of activity along Churchill Avenue of late. Just to perhaps recap, 3 projects that are currently ongoing. One is, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with our grade separations project, where there are a number of alternatives for the longer term that are being evaluated, and the council will have a discussion actually next Monday on our continuing debrief from our expanded community advisory panel on recommendations, options, and discuss next steps. The second project is a bikeway project that has gone to the PAUSD board. This is between Castellea Avenue and El Camino Real that could involve some property, or does require some property acquisition from the school district. So again, that's a topic that has been to the board once, and I know staff is working on follow-up to that prior board discussion in order to bring it back. And then the third project is a near-term traffic safety improvement related to the rail crossing and its close proximity to Alma Avenue itself. And as everyone knows, it's a very congested intersection. So with some federal, I believe it is, grant funding, our staff is working on some alternatives that will also be coming back to the city council in May. So again, just wanted to acknowledge that there are 3 separate efforts that are underway there. That last project actually went to the Planning Transportation Commission last week, I believe it was, or the week before. So lots of public discussion and certainly the potential for confusion about the projects getting mixed up. And so I know our staff is working on ensuring that it's clear that there are 3 discrete projects that are really independent of each other, but that nonetheless are part of the public dialogue, and also with ongoing consultation between the city and school district on the details and any implications of any or all of these projects. I think that was it for me. Chantal, if there are any other items that you wanted to mention, please feel free to jump in.
I think the only other thing that may be of interest is the city released our workplace reactivation plan, which is really just our way of starting the conversation of thinking about the city opening and the offices opening back up. So that's something I can share with the committee if it's of interest. It's a phased approach for us thinking about what the opening would look like, but it may be something of interest to the board. So we'll share that. And that's it for us.
Thank you. So the next is updates from,
Chair Burt, I've got a,
yes, sorry.
I've got a question. I have some updates from the district that perhaps Dr. Austin would have said. I can say them now or wait till board agenda, but we didn't, strictly speaking, have any agendas since the last meeting. So I'll leave it to you to decide where to.
Yeah, go ahead if it's not, because the next item is later in the agenda, and it's
Sure.
titled actual your board actions as opposed to district actions. So yes, please.
Okay, I'll be brief. After our last city school meeting, the CDPH followed the CDC guidelines and revised the spacing requirements for students to 3 feet. They were 4 to 6 feet. Now they're down to 3 feet minimum, and that enabled us to return to full 5-day a week for the students, at least who are already in the hybrid program. So K through 5 are able to return in person 5 days a week. And we're also doing a phased approach after discussions with our teachers and our principals. So grades 3 to 5 are returning by next Monday, those students in hybrid, full 5-day week, and then K through 2nd by the following Monday after that. And 6th graders are already on campus 4 days a week, those who've chosen it. That's about 60%. The numbers probably trended upwards a little bit. And then 7 through 12 is sort of it's a different deal just because of the nature of the decentralized classes and the logistical issues with that. But we also have students on campus for 7 through 12, and they can choose to come to campus on any given day, and those numbers will likely go up now that spring break is over and more students are on campus. And then as of March 26th, a few weeks back, about 90% of our employees were either fully or partially vaccinated. That number is undoubtedly higher now, which is great. And I think a large part of that was the prioritization that happened with respect to teachers and staff of the school district. So thank you everyone who advocated for that. I know many on this call also advocated for that, so much appreciated. And then lastly, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District granted us about $800,000 to purchase 2 new electric school buses and the supporting infrastructure. And I know that both our bodies have expressed a desire to take steps to combat climate change, and this is one of the things that we're going to be doing. So those are my updates.
Thank you. So our next item is
Chair Burt, sorry to interrupt, but
I'm
before
sorry.
moving, could we go to public comment?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry.
Yes, of course.
So we have any speakers?
Yes, if anyone from the public would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand on the Zoom app. Currently, we have Miss Rebecca Eisenberg. Miss Eisenberg, if you can unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes for public comment.
I just wanted to correct the president of the school board about how back to school these kids really are. I heard him say that grades 7 through 12 are back whenever they want to. That's really far from the truth. First of all, you all should know that Palo Alto School District was among the very first to go down to, we're operating on about 60% instructional minutes still after 14 months. Our kids are still only getting 60% of the instruction that they got before the lockdown. I know this, I actually have a kid at Pally. The second thing is that Mr. Derup said that 7 through 12 graders are there whenever they want to be. To clarify, grades 7 through 12 are allowed to be at school twice a week for a few hours each day. So I do want to clarify that we are not back to school nearly the extent that was described. The most any high schooler or 7th or 8th grader has the ability to return is twice a week on days that are assigned to them. And it's only for approximately 3 to 4, I don't even think it's 4 instructional, instructional hours while they're there. So we are still among the most lockdown and closed districts when it comes to our high schoolers who are suffering from a great amount of mental illness and depression and despair and isolation. And I also want to clarify that when given $30 million from the state or the federal government, instead of spending it on even one mental health professional or any additional mental health resources, our superintendent and the school board decided that that money should be spent on books, and with the rest spent on building improvements that we all know, and the city council has done extremely well, knows that building improvements in this financial environment are best financed through the virtually zero cost mortgage vehicles. There's nothing easier than getting money to improve a building, using the building as security itself. But our school board decided to use the $30 million it could be using on mental health professionals, on building improvements and books. It's a big disappointment for those of us with kids in school, especially the high school students who are suffering. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. And Chair Burt, we have no other speakers.
Thank you. So do we have any other questions or comments on this from members of the group? If not, sorry, I'm just toggling my screen. So if not, we can move on to what was formerly item number 5, now item number 4, or preceding 4, status report on the crossing guard program.
Thank you. We're going to have Benjamin Bacchetti from the police department provide the report.
Sure. So as you guys know, we've had crossing guard staffed by an outside vendor since 1999. Currently, in 2018, we have utilized the All City Management Services contract group. Right now, we still have 30 locations and a floating guard throughout the city, servicing our elementary and middle and high schools to a certain degree. The guard locations are determined through a collaboration, and they're currently out there. We've had some recent challenges with the different times and the different schedules that have come to light during the COVID period with different cohorts coming and going throughout school. But All City Management Services has been very helpful and responsive when we've needed to make any last minute changes. So no real exciting updates other than they're out there and they're still doing the best they can. And I haven't heard of too many issues with them so far, and free to answer any questions you guys may have about anything further.
And I wanted to point out the item is before the committee today. Just at the last meeting, there was interest in talking about the different collaborations between the school district and the city. And this is one that is timely with all the different school reopenings, et cetera. So we wanted to bring this item just for a brief discussion. So we have staff here today from the police department and transportation that can answer any questions.
Thank you. So colleagues, who would like to wade in? Any questions? And I'm having a problem getting full screen here, seeing you all.
I've got a question.
Great, Jennifer.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for bringing this forward. I think it is really, not only is transportation to school, especially by foot and bike, still something that we're really cautious about, obviously, but I think a lot of people are really out of practice, right? So this is really important. I'm wondering, I'm not surprised it's presenting challenges because there's been all these crazy changes in schedule and timing and everything else. But I'm wondering from your perspective, is the challenge just scheduling, or is it budget? Because there's half days and full days and everything else. Like what is presenting the biggest challenge right now?
For us in the police department, as the kind of the liaison with the crossing guard services, the challenges were definitely the scheduling. And then, if we had to basically increase the coverage from the crossing guards to cover kind of the middle portions of the day, which have never historically been staffed. So working with them, they've been great about responding to any additional hours that we've asked them to pursue. Those additional hours have had a effect on the budget when it comes to that, but with the savings that we had prior to the schools going back in October, we were able to offset some of those costs. So as of right now, we are good to go through the rest of the year, and then hopefully we could have some updates sooner rather than later when it comes to what the schedule will look like in 2021, 2022. So
Great. I think I can speak for the whole board just in that we haven't voted on anything, but we all have expressed interest repeatedly in just a full-time return to campus in the fall. So I think that, all signs point to that being fine. So hopefully that'll get us back to normal. And there's only 7 weeks left now. So thank you for managing that.
Sure. And one more thing, I'd be remiss to not also add how helpful the Office of Transportation and the Safe Routes group have been in the collaboration with any changes and recommendations that we may have needed to make. So
great. Thank you all. I know it's been a little chaotic, and I think we as a board have been reminded that every time we make a small change, there's just a snowball effect of so many things it impacts, right? From the busing and crossing guards and lunches, and the people that prepare the lunches also drive the buses sometimes, and so we switch something and that impact, so that's been really interesting to see just how many steps forward you have to think before you make the slightest little change. And I know that over the year we've missed some stuff. It's certainly, we've realized later, like, oh no, that totally broke that. So thank you all for all the work you've done to try to keep it on track as I feel like we have whiplash, all the changes that have happened. So I'm grateful to all the work you've done.
Great. And does our planning staff have any comments they want to add, or anything related to, our transportation staff related to safe routes to school and the connection to this item?
So I think really we were just here to provide support if there were any questions about, the utilization rate or anything like that, and the need obviously for crossing guards.
Okay, great.
And Sylvia or Philip, did you want to provide information about just some of the safety education provided to the students this year? Thank you.
Yeah, I thanks, Chantal. I just wanted to say that this year has really, thrown everybody for a loop, and we've had to, I just wanted to give some kudos out to our Safe Route staff, because they've had to convert all of our in-class, in-person education to virtual, or, and they've had to work, and they've worked with all the different cohorts, and scheduling's been interesting. There've been a lot of changes. They've done a lot of direct instruction via Zoom. And so I just wanted to say thank you to our staff and to the PAUSD staff, who have then had to, as school board member DeBrienza mentioned, who've had to kind of deal with all of the different scheduling changes. And so it's been a year of intense collaboration to try to serve the students, because we knew that this day would come when they would come back to school, and we wanted to make sure that they had some exposure to safety education that they didn't get normally. So it's been a lot of work, and but I think it's been really fruitful. So thank you.
Has it been, if I'm remembering right, there's the third grade well, I'm sure it's not a bike radio this time, right? But there's third grade education. And then in preparation for middle school, there's something. Is that what kids got remotely this year? Is that what they got online, third graders? And
So yeah, third grade is a little different this year. So third grade is actually composed of 2 in-class lessons that lead up to the in-person bike rodeo normally. This year they're getting an in-class lesson they're just getting one, and they're also getting, and there's an opportunity this summer for them to participate in rodeos that we're trying to set up off-site. So we'll be talking to the schools about who would like to host that this summer, so that those families who are interested in getting that education can have that.
that's awesome. Great, great. And then anything, yeah.
Middle school is also getting virtual lessons.
Great, thank you.
And I'll just add that as we're doing this transition to normalization, there appears to be finally what I think is a very overdue recognition in the public health community that outdoor interactions are an order of magnitude lower risk than indoor.
Yes.
And we haven't had a great deal of differentiation between what is safe outdoors versus what is indoors. But I think we're moving rapidly into that period, even while we are opening up more indoors. But there'll be, I think we should all anticipate even greater differentiation and very few restraints on outdoor activities. So having said that, Chantel?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out too, part of our wanting to share the information today was also just so that we're all further aware of the program. And I know that this may come up during the city's budget process, recognizing some of the pressures citywide. So I did want to at least acknowledge that here as well, that this will be potentially discussed as the city is going through that budget conversation.
Good point. And so we enter our budget cycle, it comes to Finance Committee in mid-May, and then in the weeks following that to the full council, and we're going to have a big struggle. We have another big hole to fill, and services that we've traditionally been able to provide are not all guaranteed on any level that we can continue this coming year, and it's going to be a struggle. So I want to make sure everybody understood that. Interestingly, so the district, for instance, is property tax base. You have unusual expenses at this time, but the city's income has been hit far more than the district. I'm on the VTA board. We received 2 huge slugs of federal funding, and the VTA actually, as a result, has an operating surplus this year, despite lower direct income. And but the cities are in a different situation, and we in particular are because of some of how we've structured our revenues. So just wanted everybody to be aware of our situation in that regard. And do we have any members of the public who want to speak on this, Danny?
Yes, if anyone from the public would like to speak on this, please raise your hand on the Zoom app. We have Miss Rebecca Eisenberg. Miss Eisenberg, if you can unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes on the timer.
Great. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Great. Okay. 2 things. First of all, I just think that Mr. Burt should clarify why it is that the city is going to not be able to fund things. Even though the city of Palo Alto has had the opportunity for more than a year to have an emergency tax on businesses, the largest businesses like Tesla, Palantir, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. The city council has chosen not to tax our biggest and most profitable businesses that are located here and employers. And we are amongst the only city in the surrounding areas that is operating on a deficit. When we keep hearing about Redwood City and Mountain View and most other cities nearby actually having the best years ever, operating at huge profits because they do what we don't do. They do what Palo Alto is the only city in the country, as far as we can tell, doesn't do, which is tax its largest employers. So that problem is of city council's own making, and city council is free at any time to remedy that with an emergency business tax, like so many other cities have done, only on our large businesses, while creating a fund to help our struggling small businesses. Second of all, you don't have any report attached. So I have no idea why the police was just speaking right now. One of my 2 teenage kids walked in the room while he was speaking. But I do want to say, and I don't know if you're going to be able to clarify this, is like, A, why is the police here? And B, I just want to say that I do not want any armed officers at any time in any school where my children are. I do not want any guns in those school districts, in the schools. I'm terrified to imagine that an armed officer will be anywhere close to my children. As you know, the Hart case, which was the Redwood City Police Department, now finally Ms. Hart was my daughter's teacher at Green, and Mr. Hart, her husband, who was murdered by the police in Redwood City by a gunshot from a police officer when Mr. Hart was just having a depression episode. I don't want guns, given that this is how armed police guards, police officers treat our teachers and across the country teach our teenagers, especially our Black teenage boys. I don't want armed officers anywhere near my children, please. What we need are mental health professionals, and please don't send in armed officers to with guns when our kids are having such mental health crises. This is a big danger. I know you're supposed to be talking about crossing guards, but I saw a police officer and I'm scared. Please show the report so I know what you plan to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. And Chair Burt, we have no other speakers.
Great, and just to clarify, Officer Biketti is here because our police department oversees our crossing guard program, and we thank him for joining us. So on that note, I believe we're ready to move on to previous item 4, which is review of recent city council and PAUSD board meetings. Maybe would the board members like to go first?
Sure. As Mr. Durant mentioned, we haven't actually had a board meeting since the last time we met. So I don't know that there's a lot more going on. He might know more from agenda setting. But it's really been all focus on how much we can reopen right now and how much we can reopen in the fall. And also looking at one of the things that's coming before us is as soon as COVID hit, one of the things we did really was pause our elementary projects because we had such a change in enrollment, and we know that that's probably temporary. We didn't want to start investing, tens of millions of dollars into projects that didn't make too much sense. So coming to us next week is a request by staff to unpause because they think they have a better handle now on what's going on and what the future holds. So we're going to be seeing that. And as a public commenter mentioned, our secondary schools, I don't think Mr. Drop said that 7 through 12 was back more than 2 days a week. At least I heard that elementary was back 4 or 5 days a week, and secondary was still 2 days a week. For the record, it is 2 full days. I mean, my kids go and they leave and are there for opening bell and they come home after last bell. So I don't know what the 2 part days are, but and we're looking right now, there's a survey out right now to find out who would be interested in coming back 4 days a week. We're trying to have this balance where if we just open it up, there's a chance there's just going to be too many kids on campus and we can't keep safe distancing. So we put out a survey to see who wants to come 4 days a week, how many kids we think we might expect if we did open it up. And if anyone's interested in just trading, all my friends are on the other half of the days. So once we get those survey results, we'll know what changes we can make for the rest of the year. And again, we're still looking for 100% open in the fall. Maybe the before time with masks or something. We're not, we'll see what the guidance is. As Mr. Drop said, many of our staff are vaccinated. And now that it's open to everyone, there's many high school students getting vaccinated, and families, starting to really get access to vaccination. So it's feeling like it's moving along. As a parent of 3 kids who are under 16, I'm not feeling it so well. Like I'm still waiting for, okay, when do we get to vaccinate our kids? But hopefully that'll start to expand soon and change the landscape. And there was something else I was going to say, Mr. Drop. I can't remember. So I'll pass it off to you and then I'll come back if I think of it.
Great, and thank you for clarifying on the issue of how many days a week 7 through 12 are. If I was unclear, I think now Dr. DiBrienza has made it clear. So thank you very much. The other item only that I have is furniture, which normally doesn't seem like something that is super interesting and related to education or even education during and after COVID, but it is. And so we're going to be spending some money on furniture. And the reason it's so important and the reason it's so cool, frankly, is because, we sort of have desks and chairs that are pretty old and pretty standard, just as you imagine a classroom looks. But modular furniture is actually really important when it comes to teaching and learning in different ways, adapting the classroom environment, both for spacing, but also for the different needs of different students who are in that class. And I think that has been a huge point that this board has emphasized, is the importance of, we've talked about diverse and broad pathways. We've talked basically about getting the education to our students in all the different ways that they learn. And it turns out furniture is a huge part of that. And so for tons of stories about how students who have maybe disciplinary issues or attention issues, something as simple as a different kind of chair to sit on has done wonders. And it's obviously not a complete solution, but it is a step, and it's something that it's just been really fascinating to be involved in that and see that. So that's something that will come up on the agenda as well.
Great, thank you. Just a few updates from the city. At the end of last month, we had our meeting on second council meeting on Castellea and their conditional use permit and environmental impact report related to it, to their proposed expansion. The council did not accept their proposal, and we had a number of directives on parameters for modifications to the proposal before it would be reconsidered by the council. And so it's going back to our Architectural Review Board and our Planning and Transportation Commission in the coming months. I don't know the timeline. So that's the update on that. In the last 2 meetings of the council, we've had a couple of things that are somewhat related to district interests. One is an update to our impact fees for parks, libraries, and community centers, which goes into this broader issue of what are the ways that we share a role in serving youth and families. And the council had concerns that the fairly significant increase in impact fees that were proposed still understated the actual amounts that we believe are appropriate and would be supported by a nexus analysis. And so what we opted to do was to adopt the proposed fees, and then this coming year to do an additional update. The fee structure hadn't been updated for 20 years and was clearly well behind what would be a fully justified contemporary fee structure. And we suspect that'll be changed further this coming year. And then kind of oh yes, Jennifer, go right ahead.
I just want, I'm taking my notes to report back to the school board. What were, you mentioned 3 that the fees were increasing for?
Parks, community centers, and libraries.
Okay, thank you.
And that goes also into discussion that we had in action items this last week on, well, I'm sorry, let me go to the following meeting after that. We established our community advisory committee on our housing element, which is part of our comprehensive plan. And it is also necessary for the next regional housing mandate update, the RENA allocations, which you may know 6,000 housing units have been assigned to Palo Alto, broken up into various income categories. That is triple the number that were in the last housing element. In the last housing element, we're on pace to meet our market rate and below pace on both our low and moderate income housing. And at the same time, we've essentially depleted our affordable housing funds locally. And so this is going to be a great challenge for this committee to identify housing sites that can accommodate up to 6,000 new units, which is nearly a 25% increase in the number of housing units in the city, and potentially that level of growth in our city population in an 8-year period, which would be a phenomenal growth rate. Jennifer, were you wanting to ask
I mean,
something?
I don't think that this is a question that can get answered right here and now, but if I'm not surprised we're on track to meet our at, you know, our at market rate housing growth, but if we have depleted our resources, is there a plan to build more low income housing? Like what has to happen? Does zoning have to change? Does fees have to change? Does what needs to, what's like the basic fundamental thing that has to change for us to even come close to meeting this?
So zoning is part of it. Land availability, resourceful land availability is another part, and funding is another part. On the funding side, there are these projects, when they are dedicated affordable housing projects as opposed to inclusionary housing, where we have a market rate project and mandate about 15% of that to be low income. We have some different thresholds that are involved there. But on dedicated projects, they're typically funded by a combination of resources, a local share, we have potentially county dollars from what's called Measure A, and then state and federal dollars often come into play, and even private or philanthropic dollars. And the nonprofit housing developers assemble those, but the local share is a very significant part of that. The state is essentially mandating a tremendous number of new subsidized units to be funded, which even with very significant increases in local funding, there appears to be a drastic gap between what is fundable and what is being mandated. And there doesn't appear to be any reconciliation between those two different things. On the local funding, what we've examined in the past and was rejected in recent years, but will be revisited by the current council, who has expressed a strong interest in doing this, are first the impact fees for affordable housing. In late 2016, we actually had, as a council, directed staff to come back with a higher impact fee schedule, and that was reversed by the new council that came in. And then we had a review of a business tax for transportation and affordable housing. That was moving forward when the crisis hit, although there were, in 2019 and 2020, there was a majority of the council who either opposed the tax or wanted it at a far smaller scale than others. We anticipate bringing back that proposal actually in the coming months so that it could be at least considered for the 2022 general election ballot. So those are two significant local revenue sources. We could triple our funding for affordable housing and still fall far short of the state mandates.
Okay, thanks for that. I would love to talk to you offline about, how Mountain View and Redwood City have done a lot more than we have done and how they're doing it, because I can't imagine they have more fun.
So actually, they do those through development agreements, which basically add very significant amounts of new commercial development in exchange. And so the net impact is to exacerbate the problem of the jobs housing imbalance rather than to reduce it. I will note that Palo Alto actually has a far greater absolute number and percentage of our housing units that are affordable than virtually any other nearby city. So despite kind of the refrain that's been out there in some of the political circles, Palo Alto's inventory of deed restricted, subsidized, affordable housing is significantly better than those cities and other cities throughout the area.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And then on upcoming meetings, I'm sorry. One other thing was under the Housing Element Committee, there had been discussion about including a school board member, which we discussed at this meeting, I believe. And the council majority opted to appoint what was a slate of candidates out of 80 candidates. There was a motion to approve a specific set, and that was passed by the council majority without modification. And that did not include a school board member. And so we are now left with that situation, and we're going to need to see, how your voice as a district is fully represented in this process. And then upcoming meetings, we have our Sustainability and Climate Action Plan this coming Monday. The following Monday, correct me if I'm wrong, Chantel, is our grade crossing, the XCAP follow-up meeting. And we also have upcoming our economic recovery discussion, all areas that may be of interest to you. Did I have my dates right, Chantel? And I guess.
Ed was giving a head nod too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Correct. Yes.
All right. And then we can open up for any comments from the public. Councilmember Tanaka, I see you made it. Did you have any questions or comments?
Well, first of all, let me apologize for running late here. For some reason, I didn't get the calendar invite this time, so I booked a bunch of meetings on top of this. So I'll be a little bit in and out on this meeting. But let's see. I think from what I heard, I think Vice Mayor covered most of it. The only thing I just want to mention also is that Councilmember Koo and myself are organizing a Stop Asian Hate rally on May 2nd, and you guys are all welcome to attend. Encourage you. There's a lot of students from the Palo Alto Unified School District involved. I don't know, 30 or 40, like a lot of them. So yeah, it'd be great if you guys could attend, and should be a good turnout. So yeah, hope to see you guys there.
Great, thank you. Shanik?
Thanks. Just two quick things, sort of related to Mr. Tanaka's anti-racism comment and the rally. I mentioned this last time, but we approved an equity committee. And so we're in the process now of setting up the first meeting of that in the next few weeks here. And again, that is a board committee that hasn't existed before. While the board has expressed a great desire and interest to achieving equitable outcomes and supporting our most underserved students, the ways we go about doing that, I think the board has recognized it's important for there to be an oversight committee, a body that goes through and does appropriate study and brings reports to the board and exercise oversight so work actually gets done. So I'm very excited to be serving on that committee along with board member Letta Mirak. And again, I think meshing in with approaches both the council, I think, and the board have taken to address issues related to equity and anti-racism. The last thing was just a comment, Chair Burt, on your discussion on the slate of community members or committee members who were approved. It might be helpful at some point at a future meeting for us to agendize a discussion on process and how process differs between the council and the school board, because for me, seeing that what happened, and the way it was approved, it seemed very unorthodox for me coming from where I sit on the school board, because we do things a little differently. And I think that would be a helpful conversation to have, because I think it will just increase our understanding and help bridge gaps that may help us be more effective as a liaison between the two bodies.
Well, then let's see if we have at our next meeting an ample opportunity to agendize either at that meeting or the subsequent one, and figure out, maybe we can talk offline on what things about process would be most valuable to discuss. Great. Okay, and then do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, if anyone from the public would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand on the Zoom app. And currently we have Miss Rebecca Eisenberg. Miss Eisenberg, if you can unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes on the timer.
Am I unmuted? I'm not unmuted.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so great. Quick responses to some of the things. First of all, I think that Mr. Burt should not, it should try to use the active voice instead of the passive voice, because yes, it's true that there's no school board member on the housing committee. It's also true that Mr. Burt voted for no housing, for no school board member on the housing committee. So please use the active voice, Mr. Burt. Second is that the new fee schedule that Mr. Burt mentioned actually is designed in order to inhibit affordable housing. The highest category of fees is multifamily housing, which is of course what we need the most. Also, I need to clarify what Mr. Burt said about our progress towards our RENA goals. There are actually 4 different categories of housing under RENA. One is market rate, which we've met. One is moderate, which is like more than $100,000 of income a year, which we're about to meet. Then there's both low and very low income housing. For the very low, we are only 4% towards our goal, which ends next year. So it's not just lack of progress, it's abominable hostility towards affordable housing. Mr. Burt also misstates the way that other cities fund housing. Just go a couple blocks south to Mountain View. They tax their large businesses, and the Google tax has actually paid for hundreds, soon to be thousands, of affordable housing units. Cities know that employers create the need for housing. Employers need to pay taxes, which they do everywhere else. And because, again, Mr. Burt refuses to work with the city council to enact an emergency business tax, like on large businesses, like so many other cities have been doing successfully, that's why we have no money in the housing fund. As to what's going on in the school district, I guess I just also wanted to clarify the lack of upcoming on the agenda. There's still no movement towards hiring more teachers, even though reducing class sizes will make it much, much easier for us to open school successfully. I also want to clarify that 4 days a week does not constitute fully open. Remember the days when there used to be school 5 days a week? Can we have that again? Also upcoming on the agendas for the school district and in the budgets, we still, as I said before, see no mental health services, even though already the suicides are starting across the country. And I urge you all to pay attention to that. Finally, there was some reference to having kids with learning differences be able to be on campus more, yet there's no ability to assess kids for learning differences in this lockdown, or very little. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. And Chair Burt, we have no other speakers.
Okay, great. And just to clarify for the record, council members Cormac, Tanaka, and I oppose the motion that was adopted on the housing element and wanted a greater inclusiveness from the community. Okay, so our next item is an update on the Cubberley activity. And I don't know, as city manager, would it be best if you give that update? Or I see Kristen O'Kane is here.
Why don't I hand it off to Kristen for a brief update?
Okay.
Sure, thank you. Vice Mayor Burt, Kristen O'Kane, Community Services. So I was asked to provide a brief update on the Cubberley concept plan, which was previously called the Cubberley Master Plan. So it's sort of been, frankly, put aside for a bit as we were shifted gears to respond to the pandemic. And as part of that, during our budget reductions, we reassessed and renegotiated our lease with the school district for the Cubberley property. So the Cubberley concept plan work was stalled for a bit, and we're at a point now where we want to get that completed. So the concept plan is done. What's still outstanding is the CEQA document that is required for either the city or the school district to adopt the concept plan. So that's the CEQA analysis is mostly done. One thing that happened during the assessment of the project is the laws governing, the CEQA laws governing how transportation and traffic impacts are assessed changed partway through development of the CEQA document. So because of that, we are going to have to reassess the traffic impacts using this different method that's now a law. And as a result, we have to amend our scope with our CEQA consultant, which will cost roughly an additional $18,000 to do that. So we're in the process of finalizing that scope with them. We do have the funds to pay for that as part of our Cubberley, one of our Cubberley funds. So that is not an issue. It was, now we're just trying to refine that scope and make sure that what the consultant does and completes will be the final assessment that's needed.
Okay. And we had our first joint committee, special committee meeting of the city school representatives on Cubberley. Independent of this, at least our council members are three different ones. Jennifer or Shanik, did you just want to? Shanik, great, go ahead.
Yeah, we had an excellent first meeting, laying the foundation for what the meetings will look like. Our first true meeting is going to be on May 5th with city staff and district staff present. And I think that, it's going to be a very fruitful conversation about what that space could look like, acknowledging the work that has already been done by the community and the city and the school district, and looking at how to move forward given our interruptions due to the last year and a half and COVID.
Great. Thank you. And If there are no other comments on that, we can see if members of the public have any.
Yes, of course. If anyone from the public would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand on the Zoom app or press *9. We currently have Ms. Rebecca Eisenberg. Ms. Eisenberg, if you can unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes on the timer.
Great. Also, again, I'm going to repeat, can you please include reports attached to the agendas? Because what I heard from the city was like a full minute or so of excuses about why there isn't a CEQA report, but I didn't hear anything about what the plans are. As you know, Coverly has been a wasting asset for so long. And by wasting, I really do mean that it's draining funds from our city and from our school district as it sits there underutilized, basically unutilized, most of it. So unutilized is Coverly that that a telecom company was able to make a presence there without anyone noticing for quite a while and had a very decent shot at having a hostile easement, which you only can get when the property is being abandoned. So can we please do something at Coverly? And I have an idea. Why don't we, while you guys are figuring all this out, as you know, we have as many as 500 homeless people now in Palo Alto and vehicle dwellers. We don't know the exact numbers because they haven't been counted. Those are just from local nonprofits and others who are trying to keep track of these things. Why don't we just go ahead and use some money from Home Key, which, as you know, is the CARES Act funded state program that is dying to give away $1.5 billion to cities if they just ask for it. Why don't we just take a little bit of the Home Key program money and put up some temporary shelters there at Coverly. Life Moves is working with a company called Dignity Moves and provided 300 temporary shelter beds in Mountain View, or actually 100, could provide 300 here. There's plenty of space for them on Coverly while you guys figure all this out. Please consider doing this. Call me, talk about it. Then I just want to say to Pat Pert, okay, I'm showing I listened to you and I acknowledge that you voted against the slate. So I will change my criticism to read, why couldn't you convince the others to have a more inclusive housing element? I also admit that I turned off the sound after I heard Council Member Cormack say that she doesn't think that any of the housing advocates who speak, like myself, who speak at all the city council meetings, should be appointed to this committee, because we housing advocates already get enough time to speak, as if other people couldn't speak now if they didn't just attend the meeting. And as if speaking to the ether is the same as getting to vote on things. And after Ms. Cormack made that comment, I turned off the sound because it was just so ludicrous to hear that, and actually quite upsetting. So a better job could have been done on that. And while I admit you tried, you didn't succeed, but thank you for trying.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. And we have no other speakers, Chair Burt.
Okay, so our final item is on upcoming meetings. Now, there's, I guess, two issues that come to my mind. One is our intended follow-up on further discussion of kind of the strategic relationship on city and school initiatives to serve children and families. And the other is a question of, now that we have an established ad hoc committee meeting on Coverly, whether that item should go simply through that committee and rather than through this committee. Any thoughts on that and other upcoming agenda items, as well as input from staff on upcoming agenda items? Shaunak, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Just on the Coverly item, I think it makes sense for the ad hoc committee to deal with that. And then, periodically reports could come here from, well, yourself or me in one of the already previously agendized items, but I don't think we need to have its own agenda item since we have that.
Yeah, and Jennifer?
I'm just wondering, there's so many committees between XCAP and Housing Element and everything else. And I think, there have been efforts, sort of inconsistent efforts to be made, like, oh, let's put someone from the district on XCAP. Okay, wait, that's not making any sense. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think of the housing element and the way that committee was formed, I don't think that there are any, certainly many, if at all, PAUSD parents, renters, right? Like, we've got 11,000 families that we serve, and I know a bunch of them applied, and I don't think any of them wound up on the committee. And I'm just wondering if we can have something set up where, when either one of us is going to be putting together a committee, whether it's appointed or whether city council decides it or staff decides it, ahead of time we can discuss it here, so we can talk about what the benefits might be of having either staff or PAUSD families or whatnot serve on each other's committees, so that we can make really thoughtful decisions before it comes to city council or school board or whatever. So that's not really a calendared item. That's more like a standing thing whenever committees are coming up. If we can be thoughtful about making sure to get it on an agenda here before it happens, so there can be thoughtful decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I actually think it dovetails into what Shanika brought up earlier about a process discussion. And then within the strategic plan outline, I'll have to double check. I believe I had alluded to some of these other things like XCAP, but I realized that we probably should fold that whole kind of process interaction as part of what's the defined collaboration between the two bodies. And so that, as you say, that we look at that deliberately and proactively. I don't have in front of me the composition of the housing committee. I believe that there were renters and parents represented, but fewer than those of us who were in the minority advocating for it. And Chantel seems to
I just
have either a
recall.
memory or data.
I don't know that it's either of those things. More anecdotal. Staff informed me that it was about a third of the group that were parents, maybe not all PAUSD parents, and some of those have currently or previously served on PTAs or the PTAC. So there's some representation, but the degree of which is eye of the beholder.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other prospective agenda items, Chantel, that you have, or anyone else?
None from me as staff, just a note on the strategic partnership question. We are working on that as staff. So our hope is to have that ready for your May meeting, and I will keep you posted.
Great.
A big body
And
of work, so
obviously,
we are working on it.
Obviously, as budget decisions get made that might impact us, obviously we want to hear about those as soon as possible. I think still the city shuttle has impacted some of our students, and obviously that's not solely your responsibility. You guys make your budgets, but I want to make sure that we're not surprised by anything that comes up.
It's a good point in terms of our budget timeline as well. So we can factor that in where relevant for upcoming agendas.
Good. And our next upcoming meeting is at May 20th. Is that correct? Third Thursday. Is that the way we do it?
Typically, yes.
Yes. I didn't want to answer without looking at the calendar. Yes, May 20th is the third Thursday of May.
Good. And so unless anyone else has anything, I think we are ready to adjourn.
Did we lose Mr. Tanaka?
Yes.
Did we lose our opportunity to approve those minutes?
Oh, yeah. I think we did.
We did. Councilmember Tanaka was on the meeting for a very short period of time, apparently.
May.
I also realized that we didn't put last month's meetings on for adoption
about
today.
that. Yeah.
So next month you will have 3 sets of meeting minutes
All right.
to adopt. We're gonna get this done.
Okay.
I did watch those minutes, so when we get to it, we'll be ready.
Well, we don't want that to go to waste.
Right.
No, I've spent 3 hours with all of you today now.
On YouTube, you can speed it up.
Would that be ethical? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. As long as you can keep up. All right. Well, thank you all. And Good luck with getting everybody back to school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck to
Okay.
you all. See ya.